It has been so long since I made a video. How do I even do this? So here's the deal. I'm currently sick, snowed in, and home alone. So be expecting some content over the next few weeks. It won't be a lot, but it'll probably be like 2 videos. So this is a video that I should have done like a long time ago, like months ago, but I never got around to doing, and it's my shocking series. Also, like I said, I'm sick, so if I sound sick or if I cough or anything during this video, apologies now. So yeah, we're gonna be discussing shockings of Australia. This year I spent 5 weeks in Australia backpacking the East Coast. I believe it was 30 hours of travel. First of all, disclaimer per usual, this is not me saying I hate Australia. In fact, I loved Australia. These are just shockings, things that me as an American, as a Midwest citizen, I was like, whoa, what's going on? That's kind of different. Also, I don't know anything that's on this list. I made this list months ago when I was there, so hopefully these ring a bell. Okay, so the first thing I wrote down is rugby is huge. And then I later corrected it and I said, no, AFL is huge. So if you're like me, you probably have no idea what AFL is, but you probably do know what rugby is. So if you know American football, it's like that, but this is Australian football. So it's the Australian Football League. When I was in Melbourne, I was just walking around the city. Honestly, I was just looking for alcohol. It was in the evening and I was just walking around, and then I saw this like giant crowd of people just go towards the stadium. So I thought there was like a concert going on. So impulsively, I decided to follow them. So I keep following the crowds. It leads me to the stadium, and then there I see what looks like rugby pictures. That is when I typed in my phone, rugby is huge. And I mean huge in Australia, because these crowds were nuts. So I typed that, and then I later was talking to people when I was in Byron Bay, and they told me that they were just shocked that I went to Melbourne and I did not see an AFL game, and they told me that I did Melbourne wrong and I have to make a comeback. So in a few years, Australia might see me again watching an AFL game. It's almost like American football in the sense of different states are competing against each other. You know, you have like, let's just say you have the Detroit Lions against the Seattle Seahawks, you know, so you have Michigan versus Washington. This is like that, but with Australia, so you have like Queensland versus New South Wales. Oh, this is a big one. Kombucha is popular in Australia. That was really different for me because Australians actually seem to take their health somewhat seriously, at least compared to Americans. Kombucha, for those who do not know, is a fermented drink, so it is really good for you. It's good for your digestive system. And pretty much everywhere I went, gas stations, supermarkets, wherever, sold kombucha. And it was like not just like one bottle, there was a whole array of kombucha to choose from. If you go to like American supermarkets, you're lucky to find one bottle of kombucha, because over here, no one drinks it. This was really interesting to me. So sometimes it's actually cheaper to buy the healthy stuff compared to the stuff that's not healthy. Now, rule of thumb, it's usually the opposite. However, there was some cases where I was in the supermarket, and if you bought the organic stuff, that was actually cheaper than the stuff that was not organic. And that was really shocking to me because as an American, it's flipped. Of course, that's not with like every single supermarket, you know, like sometimes you'll go in and like it'll be just like how it is in America, where it's like, oh, if you want the healthy stuff, you have to pay more. This is a really interesting one to me. Their sushi is not cut. So when you get like a sushi roll, I mean, sure, don't quote me on this, it was maybe just the few places I went for sushi, but this is what happened every single time. If I got a sushi roll, it was not cut. So you would have like this long sushi roll, and you just kind of just ate it like a hot dog. This one is an obvious one, but it was a shocking. They drive on the other side of the road compared to America, and their cars are flip-flopped. So when I was coming home from Australia and New Zealand, because New Zealand's the same way, it took a little bit of time for me to stop approaching cars by going to the driver's side in America, because I was so used to that being the passenger side in Australia. And especially when I was in New Zealand, I'll get to this with like a later video when I'm talking about New Zealand, but I was traveling with my friend Michaela, and we rented a car. And just even like driving on the other side of the road, it feels really weird at first. Okay, this one's super weird to me. When I was on the plane, I realized that a lot of Australians put milk and sugar in their tea. So on the plane, I got offered milk and sugar with my tea, and I was kind of like, what? So I tried it because I like to try new things. And it wasn't that bad, but it was just such a weird concept because we have milk and sugar with our coffee, which I think they do too, but okay, here's a list of different words that they say compared to us. Of course, this is not all of them, this is just some random ones that I jotted down. Instead of elevator, they say lift. Instead of trash, they say rubbish. Instead of call, they say bell. Instead of saying where at, they say whereabouts. Which is really funny. One time I was in a coffee shop, like this happened like a month ago. I was in a coffee shop here in the US and I heard someone say whereabouts, and I literally turned in the moment, did not know this guy, and I was like, are you from Australia or like somewhere in Europe? Like nobody here says whereabouts. Instead of mosquito, they say mosses or mossies. I don't really remember how they pronounce that one, but I put in like mosses. Instead of thank you, they say cheers, which honestly I love that one. Instead of you're welcome, they say it's all right. Instead of McDonald's, they say Macca's. And fun fact about that one, when you go to McDonald's, I thought that was just their nickname for it, you know, Macca's. But like you go to get on like their Wi-Fi and it straight up says Macca's Wi-Fi. Like any McDonald's in Australia says that, and I'm shook. It's literally like their name for McDonald's. It's not even like a nickname at this point, it's Macca's. This one I really liked. It was an eco-friendly difference. So their outlets, you have to turn them on to actually get them to like work. If you want to use an outlet, you turn it on before or after, like you plug in your devices. And then you turn it off when you're done with it, so that way it reduces energy. Which I really liked because it saves energy. Like it made me really question like why do we not do that in the US? This one's also kind of obvious, but I did not expect it to this extreme. Their wildlife is wild. I was on the plane going to Cairns, and I remember we were about to get off, and I was talking to the people around me, and I said like, hey, I'm a backpacker, I'm from the States, like, what do you guys recommend to do in Cairns? And this lady next to me was like, well, what do you like to do? And I was like, oh, anything with the ocean, I love the ocean. And she stopped me right there, and she was like, do not get into the ocean. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, you guys got the Great Barrier Reef, like I'm gonna get in the ocean. That's the main thing that drove me to Australia. Not even kidding, that was the main driving factor. And she was like, first of all, we have jellyfish that are invisible to your eye, like human eyes, and they can kill you. They wrap around you and they kill you. We also have ones that have super tiny heads and super long stingers that can kill you. And the beaches have to prevent them by putting in a net. So that's, if they don't have nets at the beach that you're at least in Queensland. I'm not speaking for all of Australia. If they do not have a net, I can't remember what they call those nets, but if they do not have them around the beach, you probably should not be swimming. On top of that, they have saltwater crocodiles, which are no joke. I got to see some saltwater crocodiles when I went to the Australian Zoo, and they're giant. To me, it didn't really feel that touristy. I expected like Australia to feel so touristy, but walking around, maybe it's because like last year I did Latin America, so I stuck out like a sore thumb. But being in Australia, I really did not stick out. I looked like I could be Australian. It wasn't until you started talking to me and you got my accent that you were like, she's not Australian. So I think that's why, but to me, it didn't feel that touristy. Like I could not tell the tourist from the residents unless they were doing very obvious things like taking a million photos that made them look like tourists. Also, this could be the time I went, but there was a lot of French people and a lot of Chinese people in Australia. Especially in Melbourne. When I was there was like a good amount of like there was like, I think they have like their own little like Chinatown over there, like how New York does, because there was a lot of Asian restaurants, a lot of Asian cuisine, and it was delicious. There was one night I went and got dumplings, and I was like, ah. Australians are so friendly. It's not like you're passing an average American that's giving you an RBF. You know, when you pass an Australian, most of the time they're smiling at you, and sometimes they wink at you. And when they do wink, it's not them flirting, because this happened to me several times when I first got to Melbourne, and I was shook. I was like, does everyone have like the hots for me? Like, what's going on? Oh my gosh. But then I was talking to some Australians and they're like, no, that's just them being friendly. Like, they're just winking at you. All of the big cities have free Wi-Fi, which is such a nice advantage, especially Melbourne. That their Wi-Fi was awesome. I remember Cairns. I mean, if you go to some cities, like let's say for instance Mission Beach did not have free Wi-Fi. But like if you're in like the city area, I think Sydney did too, there is free Wi-Fi, and that's really nice when you're a tourist and you don't have like service over there. This one was really shocking to me. The middle of Australia is nothing but just desert. Like, most people live on the coast. I want to say it's 80%, but I could be wrong. There is people that do live in the middle, but it's so hard to like live out there. It's almost like living in like Alaska in the sense that there's not many grocery stores and there's not much to do out there. From what I've heard, I never went to the middle, but everyone says that the middle of Australia is nothing. Australian coffee is the best coffee I've ever had in my life. Now, I have not been to South America yet, so Colombia, do not come at me. I've also not been to Europe yet, so any Europeans, chill. I've only been to 2 continents, which are North America and Australia, and I've been to 10 countries despite that, but I've even had Costa Rican coffee, and I would debate that Australian coffee is a million times better than Costa Rican. I said what I said, no takebacks. And that's me wearing my Costa Rica shirt. I just realized that. For real, I drink coffee almost every single day in Australia, and I couldn't get enough. In fact, Australia literally has such good coffee that Starbucks tried to make an appearance, and Starbucks failed in Australia. It failed. That just tells you how good it is. I mean, I'm not saying like Starbucks is top notch, but when you're an American, Starbucks is up there. Okay, I'm about to say a bad word, so any family that may be watching, just skip like the next 20 seconds. So Australians throw around the word cunt like it's nothing. In fact, if you get called a sick cunt, which I got called that on like my 2nd week in Australia, and I was really taken back. I was like, what did she just say? It's a compliment. If someone calls you a sick cunt, they mean that as like, you're really cool, like you're awesome. If they call you mate, like a lot of Americans when they're making fun of, or like not making fun of, but trying to do an Australian accent, they'll like throw out mate. Mate is sometimes a bad thing. Like if an Australian's like, what are you doing, mate? Like, you gotta really hear like how they say it, but it's not always the best thing to be called. I was really shocked on my 2nd week in Australia. I heard a dad call his 2 or 3-year-old son a cunt, and that really took me back. This one's kind of obvious, but I'm just gonna say it because it was a shocking. Australia is freaking giant, dude. And I say that because sure, it is the world's largest island, but it is also the world's smallest continent. So when I was thinking about going to Australia, I knew I was gonna do 4 to 5 weeks there, but I was aiming more towards the 4-week side of things. However, like I said a couple times already, I spent 5 weeks in Australia, and that's simply because I did not realize how much 30 hours really is. Like sure, you hear 30 hours of travel, and that's pretty much New York to California, and that's just the east coast of Australia. I met a few people that were doing a whole loop on like in Australia, and I can't even imagine. That must take probably like a year to do, or at least 6 months. Oh my gosh, this one shocked me, and I hope if you're going to Australia, take notes on this because I wish someone would have told me this. Australians' version of like a night out is like an American's version of a really classy night out. Like you're hitting like a nice restaurant. Now, being a backpacker, I did not pack any good going out clothes because I did some research beforehand about Australia, and I heard like the wardrobe is super casual. Like super casual, don't need anything nice. If you're going out to a bar or a club or a pub, you don't need to dress up for it. That's what I heard, like t-shirt and jeans, that'll do. Maybe it was just the people I went with, maybe it was just the nights I went or the vibe in the air, but literally dress nice. Dress nice. Like I said, I didn't pack any of my nice stuff. Not a single thing. I mean, I literally anticipated this summer that I was gonna spend most days hiking, so why would I have a cocktail dress ready to go, you know? If I was to do Australia over again, I would definitely pack some nice outfits for going out. because the girls over there really do dress up, and so do the guys. Another thing is they have a place called Hungry Jack's, and that's literally Burger King. Like, same menu and everything. You go up, you ask for a Whopper, boom, you have it. There's also this food, and I think I was just shocked because in America, we don't have this. All over Australia, you'll find these places called kebab shops, and they're not shish kebabs. They're not what you're thinking. When you go to like Chipotle or Qdoba and get like meat, like you can get like a bowl there, you know, like you get meat and stuff that goes on top. It's that same concept, but it's totally different flavors. And a huge thing is you can get lamb. And in the US, we really don't eat lamb. But kebabs are really good, and I highly recommend trying them. And they're especially known for being a drunk food. So if you're ever plastered and hungry, go get a kebab. I really like this aspect about Australia, and it's the fact that the way that the parents parent is way different than American parents. Australian parents are really laid back, and they just really let their kids be kids. An example of this is when I was in Noosa, I remember seeing this group of kids hopping from rock to rock, and they were hopping all over these rocks. And I kind of like, you know, being an American, I was kind of like looking at the parents, like, are they gonna say something? And it's not because the kids are being bad, but it's the fact that the kids could hurt themselves. I know if my siblings were jumping on rocks all over the place, my mom would definitely speak up and be like, guys, get down, you're gonna hurt yourself. But something I noticed with Australian parents and even New Zealand parents is they did not have that mentality. They were like, the kids are just being kids. And I kind of loved it. I'm also gonna save you. Hopefully you're not as gullible as me with this one. If an Australian tries to tell you about drop bears, don't believe them. I met this group of Australian girls, and they proceeded to tell me about these animals called drop bears, which essentially are koala bears, but they fall and drop on you and attack, and you never know when they're gonna fall or whatever. And it sounds bizarre to believe, right? So I did not believe it right away. I was like, there's no way these things are real. There's no way. I was not believing them, but then they kept going on, and they were being serious. And I was like, you know what? Australian wildlife is pretty wild. I believe it. It wasn't until I got to New Zealand and made a total fool of myself that I learned that drop bears were not real. I was staying in this hostel in Wanaka in New Zealand, and I saw a sign that said, watch out for drop bears. And so in a straight face, like being as like straight up as possible, I just asked the worker, I just said, oh my gosh, do you guys have drop bears too? Like, Australia has those. And the guy looks me dead in the face and he's like, sorry to break it to you, sweetheart, drop bears don't exist. They seriously had me going for a solid month thinking that these things were real. Apparently, there might be itchy caterpillars walking around Australia. Another thing I learned is they can legally label anything in Australia as organic in the supermarkets. It isn't unless they have like a certified thing on there that looks a certain way. I don't know how it looks, but there's like a certified stamp that says if it's actually organic. But if it does not have that, you can put organic anything. You could be selling organic Oreos just to make more money that aren't actually organic and you don't get sued for it. This one's kind of interesting. So sometimes shopping centers like a Kroger or Walmart, Meijer, whatever, sometimes they're in malls. So you're just like, you could be walking, you know, I'm trying to think, PacSun, like walking around a Tilly's, and then you walk out and then there's Meijer, you know? Another shocking, this one really shocked me, is you don't have to have car insurance in Australia. It is highly advised, but it's not illegal in the slightest to not have car insurance. Another shocking is Domino's is actually known as the cheap pizza in Australia. And that was shocking to me because Domino's in the US is like the more expensive like pizza chain. However, portion sizes are tremendously smaller in Australia. Now, the US is known for having giant portion sizes, which I always knew, but I didn't really understand that concept until I went to Australia and I ordered a large pizza for like $8. And I was like, I cannot believe like I got a large pizza for $8. That's nuts. Usually it's like $30. And only to find out the large pizza was the size of our small. Which $8 still, you can't beat that, it's not bad. But it was essentially the same price as the US. And you can't get like an extra large pizza. At least from what I've seen. These are all my experiences, so like this can be totally different to like each person. Maybe there's places I don't know about, but from what I saw, you could not get like US portion sizes in Australia. So Australia is very LGBTQ friendly, like super friendly with that, especially the cities. Even when I was in like the country-ish parts, it seemed very LGBTQ friendly, and it seems super accepted over there, which is really awesome. Gas is also super expensive in Australia. When I was there, it was $8 for a gallon, and literally in the US we complain if it goes over $3, so that's crazy. There's also paper straws in almost every restaurant. They don't have plastic straws anymore, which is really cool. Sure, paper straws are not my most favorite thing, or anyone's most favorite thing. I don't think I've ever met a person that's been like, oh, paper straws, yay! I love the idea of getting rid of plastic straws. So it's really cool that Australia has done that. 7-Eleven is also huge in Australia. You cannot go past like a city without there being a 7-Eleven present. And at least to me, that was shocking because like where I'm from, we don't have like any 7-Elevens. And I know like it's like a Midwest thing to not have many of them, but like I was shocked. The bats are also huge in Australia. They're no joke. I think their wingspan is like this big. I know you can't really see how big that is, but they're big. Oh, another thing is sometimes you'll be walking in Australia and you'll just be on the sidewalk, and out of nowhere, the sidewalk will just disappear. And I mean that in the sense of like, you'll be walking on a sidewalk and all of a sudden it'll just end and it'll be like grass or road. And then you're like, what do I do? Like, I've had that happen so many times in Australia, and it's really annoying as a backpacker. Like that, my main mode of transportation is walking. There's also a tax on alcohol for an incentive to not drink it, since it's not good, obviously, to drink, which is pretty cool. And after a certain time in the night, they stop selling liquor in liquor stores or anywhere. And I was in Byron Bay. I remember there was one night that we were going out and I decided like, oh, I'm gonna go get some like liquor to put in my drink. I was shocked when I walked into a liquor store. It was probably 10 p.m. or something, and the guy in there was like, sorry, like after 9 p.m. or whatever it was, he's like, we can't sell liquor. We can only sell like seltzers and stuff like that because it's not as hard. Also, based on my experience in Australia, the party scenes end pretty early. They end around anywhere from 11 p.m. till 1 a.m. Celebrities are also not a big deal in Australia, like how they are in the US. Like, celebrities in the US are like gods. I mean, like, you could ask a kid, like, who do you look up to? And they'll straight up say a celebrity, and that's normal. Or it's super normal in the US to see like a celebrity on the street and just freak out, you know, be like, oh my gosh. In Australia, that's not the case. For instance, Chris Hemsworth lives in Byron Bay, and he's known just to like walk around supermarkets and live life like a normal person. And if someone sees him, maybe he gets asked for like a photo or two, but he doesn't need like a security guard to walk around. In the US, you could never. Another thing going with that is AFL players, like their version of NFL, they're also not a big deal. Like, I knew someone who said that they saw an AFL player on Tinder and they matched and they started talking and whatever. That's normal to do. It's normal to be a good athlete and also be a normal person, or to have a talent and also be a normal person, which I really like that aspect of Australia. And the final thing I have on this list is their sports are very different from ours, in the sense of, I already told you guys about AFL, but there's other games. The other two games I have here is cricket and netball. So apparently these games are not just Australian, they're also European, but I never heard of them until I went to Australia. Netball is basically like basketball, but it's like a girl sport, and they wear skirts while they play basketball. And to be totally honest, it's been a while and I do not remember what cricket is, but cricket is not American. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it'll make me smile. And expect probably like 1 or 2 more videos while I'm on break and home and absolutely bored out of my mind. If you're an Australian watching this, what up? I loved Australia, and I definitely plan to make a comeback and go there in a few more years. Till then, I will see you guys next time I see you guys with a brand new video. Bye. Also, one more thing, if you like keeping up with my travel content, I actually just made a Facebook page called The Wandering Journalist if you want to check it out. It's gonna consist of all my travel videos, all of my random TikTok travel videos, pictures. If you love journalism, it's for you. It's like just my thoughts and everything. So if you want to check that out, that would mean a lot. Okay, for real this time. See you guys.